I'm not really. I mean, I don't really go to the cinema very often unless it's by myself and to see horrors or thrillers. Apart from the 80s, where I went to see absolutely everything. But I have I don't have memories of going to the cinema as a child.
Oh wow.
And I couldn't even tell you the first film I saw. I mean, I remember Superman. I remember sitting through Bugsy Malone and being distinctly unimpressed. I remember Jaws, but I suppose Superman was the sort of first one.
Yeah, Superman was about 78, I think.
Yeah, so it must have been that. I mean, I mean, my relationship with films, to be honest with you, is not connected with cinema. My relationship with films came from VHS cassettes,
Oh right.
and so whilst I went to the movies a lot, that was never the big joy. The big joy was, I mean, I can tell you the first video I ever rented. I can tell you the impact that
Go on.
had. Halloween.
Oh.
Now I must have been, I don't know, 12 or something when I
yeah, because Halloween is from 1978 as well.
Yeah, but but this was the first video cassette that I
So that would have been into the early 80s then.
Early 80s.
You started
very
getting...
early 80s. And I'll never forget it. We rented a bloody Betamax, and we'd rented a Betamax machine and hired a VHS tape. So we drove all the way back, and it didn't fit, obviously. So I threw the biggest strop, and I made my stepfather drive me back to the shop and get this. And I will never, ever forget that first time I watched Halloween. I mean, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. And then, of course, I just went through every single horror film that had ever been made. I'd go and rent, 4 movies at a time. And I just worked my way through the lot. I also remember trying to watch 10 Rillington Place, and my mum, for some reason, was in the room. And I was so excited about watching it. I was so excited. And of course, one of the first shots is him with Muriel.
Yeah.
And he put Muriel on the floor.
Yeah.
And he was going, Muriel, Muriel. And that's when my mother said, no, look, no, you're 12 years old. And she turned it off. And of course, that was horrified me, the fact that she turned it off. But I remember, of course, the moment I could remember it. I also got caught watching Pink Flamingos when I was right. 12, and Granny's in the pen going, Eggman, Eggman, Eggman. And my mum's coming in and went, what is this you're watching? You can't watch this. This is. So I had to sort of work out when I was going to watch these movies. I was very interested in all the underground films and. The Silent Partner I watched when I was very young, and that's one of my favorite movies. I mean, I wish I put that on my list, because that was I think it's one of the most underrated movies I've ever seen. And also, I think it's, when people talk about playing evil characters, no one, I mean, even Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter comes close to how cruel Christopher Plummer is in that film. I mean, he is the most evil man I've ever seen put on celluloid.
But you see, you say that, sort of 10 Rillington Place, which is Richard Attenborough, and I always kind of think that's one of his great underrated performances.
I absolutely agree with you. I would put it well up there. Well up there.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, for starters, it's one of just the most atmospherically spooky films, because it was filmed in the house. It was filmed there.
Yeah.
It was filmed in Rillington Place, so it has a sort of, and also, I at that time I was very interested in reading books about serial killers. I mean, God, if the police ever raided my house, they would think, all the books that I have on this subject, they would think I was deranged. But I remember reading Ludwig Kennedy's which of course the film is based on.
Yeah.
Book 10 really took place. And so when this film, I suddenly stumbled across this film, and I didn't even know it existed back then.
Yeah.
It was one of the most extraordinary things that I'd come across. And of course, I got to work with Rudolph Walker in The Thin Blue Line, who was in
yes,
the
of
film.
course.
So, he said, well, I only did a few days on it. And I said, I know, but you were in it. And it was so exciting. And so that's really where my relationship with cinema began, was with the video cassette.
Well, let's talk then about how you got started, because you got into RADA, no mean feat in itself. Now, you were saying that, historically, you could almost just walk in, but certainly in your era, when you started, you had to audition.
4 times. It went over a period of a month, and you had to go audition, then you had to have a recall that same day, then you had to go away, and then you receive a letter saying whether you got through to the next round. Then you'd have to go, and you had to do a workshop day, a whole day, and then they got the last people, and they only took 20-something people a year back then. So they got 40 of us in the room, and they said, thanks for coming. Half of you will hear yes, half of you will hear no. And that's how it worked. So it was stiff competition, yeah.
Can you remember your audition piece?
I think it was Iago from Othello. And then I think I also did one which was Ferdinand from the Duchess of Malfi.
Neither of those are particularly easy pieces.
No, they're not.
You're setting yourself up for a fall.
Yeah, but you see, it's funny because people think of me as a sort of comic actor, and actually, I didn't do much comedy originally. I did a bit at RADA, but mostly my theatre roles have not been comedic. So I wasn't thinking of going in and doing a funny one, because it's much harder to make people laugh than it is to make people quiet.
Well, the irony is obviously that kind of when you left RADA, you worked consistently, but the role that really caught the eye initially was in Ab Fab, which then kind of led on to obviously The Thin Blue Line. But can you remember auditioning for Ab Fab? Because I would imagine that must be intimidating with Jennifer Saunders and the cast for that.
It was, but it was so exciting because I'd been fans of French and Saunders and the comic strip for years, and Jennifer Saunders was one of my comedy heroes. So I was over the moon to get Ab Fab, and I got to do it. I got to be in a couple of episodes, which was amazing. My first day, I turned up, and they said to me, "Right, you've got to drive this Mini, and be careful because you've got June Whitfield and Jennifer Saunders and Joanna Lumley in the car with you." And I said, "I don't drive." And they said, "What?" I said, "I don't drive." Oh fuck! Oh, all right. Well, don't tell the producer. Come with me. And he gave me a quick 15-minute lesson behind in this tiny Mini. And
for the benefit of the DVLA listening, you have a license.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't have a license. No, let them come for me. I didn't have a license, and I drove illegally, but it was fantastic. So I had a great. And listen, and also, I grew up with a huge love of comedy on television. So I mean, don't forget these early comedies. I would have killed, to work with Rowan Atkinson, to work with these people. I worked with Alexei Sayle for a very long time beforehand, who was another comedy hero of mine. So Ben Elton. So I got to meet all these people. Stephen Fry I got to work with. I mean, they just kept coming, all these amazing
Well, that brings us
So
then
I was in
to
heaven.
oh, so that brings us then to the thin blue line, which is kind of the role which I can imagine that must have been extremely intimidating, where you've got Rowan Atkinson, you know, who's still a giant of comedy and comic acting. But your role, I'm wondering how that evolved, because on paper, Ben Elton's script on paper, if it was, it evolved into how it ended up on screen in rehearsals. Was that the intention?
Well, again, I had to do a workshop for that. They were workshopping lots of different characters, lots of different people in different characters. So, um, I mean, my audition for it, I played Goody in exactly that way that you see on television. So they must have thought it worked, because I didn't have any other image in my head. The image that I got from it was that he was rather like a sort of young Frank Spencer. You
Yeah,
know, he was in love with, but he had to be kind of over the top to be, because it was an over the top show. It was a
yeah,
silly show.
yeah.
So, but I certainly didn't. You know, he wasn't gay, but then everyone back then equates gay with being camp, and
Yeah.
I know some very camp straight men and some very straight acting, very straight camp men. So
But it was a great ensemble cast, but it
yeah,
was both your role and the great David Haig as a CID inspector. They're
yeah.
both performances which absolutely come off the screen and, dare I say it, kind of overshadow Rowan Atkinson.
Well, you see, yeah, maybe that's what Rowan thought. I didn't, because I thought it's like when you get Rowan Atkinson, you understand completely the Christmas special of Blackadder, where they decided to make him nice and lovely, and you
Yeah.
know, Baldrick, you brought this thing, which I think is almost funnier, because he's turned it on its head, and the way Rowan plays it. So I actually thought his character in that was one of the funniest. I'm not sure whether he did, but he made me laugh a hell of a lot. I mean, it was just full of big characters, and Ben
Yeah.
Elton wrote a fantastic cast. It's like Dad's Army, you know. Everyone has their favourite, but everyone loves everyone as well, you know. But everyone has their favourite, you know, Pike or whatever. I mean, I
But
think he created something very similar.
but it only lasted for incredibly two series, and it was a
Yeah.
very popular series. Was there a reason for it coming to an end?
Well, I don't know what went on behind closed doors. I mean, I think it came to an end, and like these things do, and I don't know what the reason was. I mean, I really don't. So it's just one of those things you just have to accept. You know, you just go, oh, wait, okay. Well, you know, I'm always of the belief that, you know, 3 series max top.
Yeah.
So you know, it would have only ever been one more anyway.
So it was a role that kind of very much established you in the public domain. You went on then to do Notting Hill, and again a memorable role in that. And then obviously there was then you came to, I think it's around about 99 where you did 1999 where you did Gimme Gimme Gimme, which was
Yeah.
a hyped up camp character, even more so with the obviously the legendary Kathy Burke.
Yeah.
How did you find working on that? Because it looked enormous fun.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a lot of fun, but we had a bit of a rocky time with the press for
Yeah,
series one. So you know, series two. I mean, it was great looking back on it. You know, I wish I'd relaxed and enjoyed it more. I mean, it was quite stressful doing it in front of a live audience once a week.
really?
But
Because I
but
would have
we
thought the element of theatre performing in front of a live audience would have been great for you to be able to react to perform to.
Well, yes, I mean, it works. It works in that way for the laughs, because it's very helpful if you get a good, you know, great audience laughing with you. But it does make it. It can affect your performance in a bad way, because you're really supposed to be doing it for the cameras,
Yeah,
and you have to find a balance between entertaining the audience, getting the laughs you want, but making it believable and know where the cameras are for particular shots, so you know what you're going to do. But we did rehearse it quite thoroughly. So, and once we got out, we were always a bit nervous at the start, but once you got out there, and people, especially after we'd done the first series, so people knew what they were coming to see, we actually tended to get people who knew what it was, so you could relax a bit. I think the first series, nobody really knew what they were sitting and watching.
Yeah. Did you find, sort of both in rehearsals and as the series evolved, that both Kathy's performance and your performance, which are kind of hyper realized, would kind of G one another up to further and further excesses?
Well, Kath and I both said this. That she's an actress. She was someone I'd worked with in the theatre before, and I knew what she was going to do, and she knew exactly what I was going to do. So we never really had any discussions. It just sort of worked. The chemistry was there, and what we enjoyed doing was shouting. We enjoyed shouting at each other. We wanted whole scenes of us just shouting, and the producers would say, "No, you can't do that." But we thought it was hilarious that the more we just shouted. So we were very much on the same page as to how the relationship was, and it came off the page very easily. I mean, it's very easy to understand Tom and Linda because it was written so well, and Jonathan and Harvey made it very easy for us. But we just used to play, and no matter what she did or no matter what I did, it just worked because comedy-wise, I got her, and I'd been a huge fan for years. So, but we have worked together before, so we knew how we kind of each other behaved.
So, this brings us now then to your second choice of film, the second film that you have a fondness for whatever reason. So, what would that second film be?
Rosemary's Baby, because when I first saw it, I was too young. And I thought it was boring, and I didn't get it at all. And I kept thinking, well, why is everyone saying this is so? And then as I got, I'm one of those people that loves to watch films I like again and again and again and again and again. And then I suddenly stumbled across it when I was slightly older, when I was sort of 18 or 19, and I watched it. And I suddenly realized quite how horrific it is. And then I read everything Ira Levin had ever written. And then I watched it again, and I still watch it on average once every 2 months, and I see something new every single time. And the shot that I think is life-changing if you're a cinema fanatic. And it's a very simple shot, and it's when they go in and Minnie Castevet is bringing in, they're meeting them for the first time. So he's just served the vodka blushes, and then he goes and sits down. And he goes and sits down at the far end of the room. So you get a wide shot of him. He starts saying, "Where are you from?" He goes, "Oh, I'm from Omaha, a guy's from Nebraska." Goes, "Omaha's a good city. Nebraska is too." And what you'd usually expect is the camera to go in a bit. So the next shot, the cut would be, you see him up close. You get the talking. The camera moves closer to the Rosemary and Guy, but stays exactly the same for him. And he's sitting there talking, and they never give him a close-up, and it's an extraordinary moment because of the framing and what's behind it. Because and once you see it again and again and again, it's a shocking moment because you realize that there's a reason why that camera is not going closer to him, because he is so unutterably evil. And I found when I noticed that, I then started reading up on how Polanski put the film together, because basically Polanski had no idea how to write a screenplay, and he said and they said, well, you've got, do you want to go at doing, they got this other writer to write the script. And he said, no, I don't want to do it like that. And they said, well, you write it. So he had no idea. So he sat down with the book and just basically transcribed the book thing, because it's the only film that I've ever seen which is so close to the book that the dialogue is the same. So he had no idea, but managed to make the most perfect, one of the most perfect films, the music. I mean, but Christoph Kazalski, I can't quite pronounce his name, but it's extraordinary. And I do find it, I do learn something about it every single time I watch it. So for me, it's a bit like The Exorcist. It's one of those films that just keeps giving. And there aren't many movies around that keeps giving in that way.
Now, James, I've always kind of thought that film is a director's medium as much as it is an actor's, and I think you're absolutely right about that shot. And the shot that I remember from it, which I think illustrates that it is a director's medium, I think it's Mia Farrow. She goes into the bedroom to make a phone call, and the door is half open. And if I can do it on that, if that's the door, and you can only kind of just about see her kind of here. And if you see it in the cinema, everyone in the audience goes,
yes, it's very clever.
Right, to try and look around the door.
Yes, I know the shot exactly you're talking about, and it's so clever because you obviously know this as well. Polanski got Tony Curtis to make the phone call,
to do the call, yeah,
and didn't tell Mia Farrow. And Mia Farrow and Tony Curtis know each other, so you could almost hear in Mia Farrow's voice an uncertainty of who she's talking to.
Yeah.
She recognizes it,
yeah,
but can't say anything.
Yeah.
And it's the once you know that, you hear it in a totally different level. I've also never ever seen a film that has encapsulated what it's like to dream so well.
Right.
They often you see films and you look at them and you think, that's not a dream. The dream sequences, they're all rubbish. But this is the first film that I saw when I looked at it and thought, that's how dreams work. They snap from bits to bits and nonsense comes out and and then I read through the dream sequence the other day, actually, in Levin's novel, and it is written exactly like it's filmed,
yeah,
but almost word for word. And it is extraordinary because you then realize that it's Jacqueline Kennedy that comes down the stairs and talks to her when she's in bed. It's the sisters at her school that do it. It's Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy on the ship, where she suddenly finds herself naked. And then it's Hutch. And then there's a description that he writes, and he says there's a black sailor, and the black sailor turns around to her and says, and obviously hates her for being white, and says, you better go downstairs now, miss. And I had always looked and I thought, why is he talking to her like that? Why does he say it in that way? Well, if you read the book, Polanski obviously said to this guy, talk to who's the guy from the lift, who's the lift attendant in the building. Say it to her like you hate her. And all these things sort of come together. And then when I watched a thing about Polanski the other day, and his favorite shot in the movie is a bizarre one. It's when she's been taken out by Dr. Dr. Hill. Dr. Hill's, and he's just called Saperstein on her, and they put her in a taxi, and Dr. Shand is driving the taxi, and Polanski said the shot of Shand turning around and going is his favorite shot in the movie.
Oh, right.
Because in his director's mind, it all lined up perfectly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the most extraordinary film, and it's also one of the films where I have a visceral reaction to. I find John Cassavetes so cringeworthy in it as Guy, brilliantly so, because he's such a worm. He's such a you can see how he's working. He's just this ghastly little worm. But you've got to see it a few times to realize just how awful he is.
Well,
it's just one of those films that I will never ever tire of watching and examining and boring people to death.
well, that was Rosemary's Baby was Polanski's first Hollywood film after a string of really well, he'd done the Fearless Vampire Killers, but you know, proper Hollywood, that was his first Hollywood film. Now, and here we go, segue to yourself now. You'd gone over to America yourself after well, I think it was during Gimme Gimme to do
it was
Bette Midler. So and how did all that come about, and how did you find Bette Midler working?
I've got French and Saunders to thank for that, because French and Saunders had worked with her and suggested me. So I was flown over to audition for her at her house. So I went and I sat there sweating in Los Angeles, and then I flew back, and then I got a call saying, fly back because we want the producers to meet you. So I had to go to this mini auditorium with producers scattered about in it and do the audition for them. And then that's when I was told, great, it's all going ahead. You got to sign for 7 years. And I thought, oh, 7 years. I've got gimme to do. Well, we'll let you go back and do that, you know. But anyway, I was thinking to myself, and after a couple of episodes, I thought, oh, I won't be here for 7 years. So I had the best time of my life, really. I mean, it was just fantastic. I mean, I spent 2 years over there, and I got to work with some incredible people, Dolly Parton and Olivia Newton-John and Kobe Bryant and Tim Curry and John Lovitz and all these incredible people every week. And I had a blast. Of course, I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes.
But I say, because the series, you know, Hollywood and America's quite brutal about its TV series, isn't it? And if it doesn't work, that's it, we move on.
Out. And you're gone. I couldn't even pick up the stuff. I went back the next day because I'd left my Filofax in my dressing room, and I wasn't even allowed into the car park.
Wow.
That's how severe it is.
So, I mean, for many actors, you know, Hollywood is getting to Hollywood is a bit of a dream. Not for all actors, I know, but yeah, and that dream there are so many stories of it turning quite nightmarish for so many actors. Was that your experience? Because why not stay in Hollywood? Because I
didn't want to stay in Hollywood. I didn't want to. There was this big thing when I got back. The Mirror did this thing of, Bette Midler crushed my Hollywood dream. I didn't have a Hollywood dream. I went over there to do the show. I don't drive, number one. So I had to rely on my friends to get me there. I'd spent 2 years there. I had to come back and do Gimme. And it was never my dream to go to Hollywood. What parts would I get? I was no leading man. You know, you have to read. If you want that, you have to give up a lot, and you have to be prepared to be ruthless. You have to be prepared to play the game. You have to be prepared to go to every single thing you're invited to. You have to be prepared to snooze and everything. I've never been good at any of that. I never go to any functions for actors or anything. I didn't even turn up when I got nominated for things for what's on stage, because I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. So I knew it wasn't for me. It is for some people, but it wasn't for me. I had a great time. My home is here. I had a fantastic time. My friends were great and everything. I rented this huge house in the hills with a pool and everything. And all my friends stayed there. And I had a dog when I was over there that I took care of. And then it was time to come back. So yeah, because the money had run out. And I knew I had to do Series 3 of Gimme, which I was really wanted to do, and I was really excited about.
Now, there was this time from sort of like the mid-90s to the early noughties where you were playing these very flamboyant characters, you know, outrageously flamboyant characters. And it seems that over the past sort of 20 years or so, you've very much drawn a line under that that style of, or that type of performance, that type of character. Was that a deliberate thing?
It wasn't so much deliberate. No, it was just I got to the end of that, and I thought, if I don't be more discerning. I mean, obviously, if one of my comedy heroes or one of my heroes calls me up and says, like Peter Richardson, who I love, one part of the comic strip, wanted me to go and do Churchill the Hollywood Years, and he said, I want you to play the flamboyant hairdresser in it, and I said, yeah, absolutely. In fact, he was kinder than that, because he said, choose which part you want, but I would like you to take that part. So I said, yes, I'll take that part. And so I wouldn't have turned that down for the world. The chance of working with Peter Richardson and Tony Sher and people like that. So I had a great time. So it depended on who it was for, to be honest with you.
So
I mean, I did another film playing not a flamboyant character, but a sort of, he was gay and everything, because I had the chance to work with Brian Cook, who was. It was called Colour Me Kubrick, and it was a chance to work with John Malkovich. So I worked with Malkovich for a few days, and Brian Cook, was the first director on The Shining. He did all of Kubrick's films.
Yeah.
So, again, I had, 3 bizarre days with, 4 bizarre days with John Malkovich and Jim Davidson. I mean, doing the most weird scenes. So, it all depended on who was asking, really.
Now, over the past 20 years, you've had a really eclectic range of film, roles. There's things like the Fat Slags movie, to staples like TV staples like Casualty and Holby City and Midsummer.
No, I've never done Holby.
Oh, sorry, I thought you'd done Holby. Sorry, apologies.
No, Casualty.
And through to things like playing the Master in Doctor Who. Now, I know the Master caused you issues. How do you look back on that particular period?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a Doctor Who fan. I know nothing about Doctor. The last thing I knew about Doctor Who was that he had a big scarf and curly hair, and I was told I would be working with Tom Baker. He was my doctor, and I thought, way, great, I'm going to be doing this. And it was all going absolutely fine, absolutely fine. And then I signed a letter condemning the abuse that J.K. Rowling was got, and I signed a letter saying, Stonewall, don't say no debate, have a debate. And from that moment on, it was carnage. It's the way they did it. It's not what they did. It's the way. If they called me up and said, look, we have an issue with this, and I would have said, it's listen, 200 quid and lunch I lose, nothing else. But they phased me out without telling me, and then they put out a statement saying we do not tolerate transphobia, which is what they called it, which sent a completely erroneous message to lots and lots of people, and did my career huge damage. And they sort of, like I've said this before, they just knifed me in the back. So I don't have anything more to say about them. I would never work with these people again. The people who made this decision, and it was a sort of thing of it looked into the future of what was going to come. The state we are in now.
Yeah.
So, but. Job-wise, I don't care. A Doctor Who doesn't mean anything to me, so it didn't bother. It was a good. I liked doing it because it was an audio job, which I very, very rarely got to do.
You've been, you have been, and you are quite forthright on your social media feeds. Is that kind of thing now where you've said your piece, people know what your opinion is, and it's there for people to see, and it's time to move on, as far as you're
No, it doesn't work like that, I'm afraid, because once you're tagged with this, once you decide that it's wrong, we've just had the Olympics, watching 2 men beat women to a pulp every week. Once you decide that's wrong, you're in you should be in the fight. You should make your voice heard. There's so few of us out there fighting this nonsense at the moment that it's unfortunately a fight, because you're not just fighting it because you believe it. Look at what's happened to Graham Linehan. He fights this because he believes it. He's not on a grift. He's lost a lot. and you either believe in something and you speak up about it. You can't just say it and then disappear. You're not part of the fight. You know, it doesn't matter. People don't look at my texts and my tweets from a year ago. You have to keep reiterating it. So it's a never-ending fight, and of course it broadens into other areas as well. But I don't believe anything that I've written is something we all didn't believe in 10 years ago. So it's not me that's gone mad. It's everything else that's gone mad. I've stuck with what I've always believed in, and I'm not changing my mind on for an ideology that demands I step in line. I'm not going to do it.
Both yourself and Graham have kind of taken hits for these, for what you put forward. Where do you see this going now in the next 5 to 10 years?
Pretty much worse. Worse.
All right. Well, look, let's get on to something lighter now. Let's get on to your third final choice of film. What is the third film that's kind of has meant so much to you and you have a fondness for?
Well, now you're asking me to choose between two, because I love. I mean, I'm going to say The Exorcist, but that's been spoken about so much, and I love it for all the reasons that other people have said. The sound, the editing. I mean, it's just a masterpiece. So I won't do that. But I'm going to do a big, ball swinging, macho movie that just comes and kicks your ass all over the place. It doesn't give a monkeys. And it's The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original. I mean, from the very moment it starts, it's a relentless, it's New York 70s style, kicking your ass. Every character, every frame is just a beast. And it's shocking. It's remarkably shocking. It's got some very brilliant performances in it. It's got some very brilliant actors in it. Walter Matthau are just knocking it out of the park, and what an actor who can do comedy and serious stuff. I mean, it's just one of those movies that just says, New York, spit on the pavement. This is how we're doing it. Get back. And I just love every second of it. And again, I watch it over and over and over. It's a bit like The Wild Geese. I watch that over and over. It's the same type of thing. Those big, ballsy, people would call them politically incorrect movies now. Well, yeah, maybe now, but then to me, they're still fantastic movies. I mean, they're so openly sexist and awful that it makes you laugh. They have a whole scene about the woman who loses her ring down the loo, and Kaz Wolowitz is screaming at her, "Why the hell have we got James in this fucking office? We can't even. It would be you." Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Dolowitz. It's so in your face, and I just think it's extraordinary, from the music to the setup to the way it's shot. It's just one of the best action movies. And I'm not a great action movie fan, but I find this much more of a thriller. And what a movie! I mean, just what a movie.
Where do you think it went wrong with the remake?
Oh, everything was wrong. Everything was wrong. Okay, Denzel is a great actor. So is John Travolta. They both are great actors, but the whole concept was wrong. The whole concept was just wrong. And I'm a huge believer in not remaking these things. If you're going to remake it, don't remake it, reimagine it. And I don't think it succeeded at that. It was a sort of like a wet fish. It came out and it sort of went, here I am. But I didn't find, and you can make these characters as tough as the problem was, he was playing it evil. I'm the evil and I'm the good. And you didn't get that sense in the original. You got the sense that this was a very mechanical part of the day. This is an ordinary day. You got Jerry Stiller sitting there telling a story about a bomb being a cantaloupe, and it was real life. Whereas this was a movie. That was real life. This was a movie. And we laugh now. That the city wants $1 million. This city doesn't have $1 million now. And they've got that wonderful line from the man. He goes, "Well, what am I going to do, Marie? You always give me such advice." She says, "Well, you know what is good you're going to get out of it?" He says, "What?" He said, "You're going to get 28 sure votes." If you say for hostages. It had a humour to it, which all these 70s films do. They all have they've got that wonderful scene meeting the Japanese members of the tube train, and she gives Mr. Mr. Zul, and he goes, "Get these monkeys out of here." And they go, "Thank you very much, Inspector. It's been a welcome experience." He just looks like that. And it's got those little touches in it, which, okay, they're not politically correct now, of course, but it had a humour and in fact, in that particular instance, the joke is on him.
Yeah.
The joke isn't on them. They're not making fun of them. They're making fun. He makes a racist comment, and they go, "Yeah, okay, we know what you said." Ha ha ha. So it's a very cleverly constructed movie, and of course Robert Shaw just giving the most evil, one of the most evil performances, and Martin Balsam, and of course one of the greatest endings of all time.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest endings that you see it coming now, but I never saw it coming back then.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those movies, again, you can just watch and watch and watch, and just it gives you a tingle at the end. You think, "Oh God, I've watched it again," and it was equally fantastic.
You see, that was film which was directed by, I think it's Joseph Sargent, who was arguably a bit of a journeyman director, but it's a great, it is probably his best film, because having gone from that peak, about 12 or so years later, he then directed Jaws: The Revenge, which kind of, you kind of how gone from that to that,
I don't know how that happens. I mean, unless outside forces, but or producers say you can't do this and you can't do that. I don't know, but yeah, it's astonishing. It's astonishing how you can get it so right and then get something so wrong. But everyone can do that. M. Night Shyamalan can do that very easily. Make really interesting movies and then miss the mark entirely with garbage. I watched one of his the other day, The Cabin in the Woods. And I just thought it was just one of the worst films I've ever seen. And yet, I think Signs and the Bruce Willis one was genius.
Unbreakable.
Genius. Yeah.
It is worth,
no,
with The Cabin in the Woods, it's worth reading the graphic novel that it's based on, because the ending is very different.
Oh, really? I didn't even know it was based on a graphic novel.
Yeah, based on a graphic novel that's very different. So,
okay, I'll have a look at that. Yeah.
So where you are now, career-wise, as I say, you've been an actor your entire life, and you are doing these eclectic roles. As you look back on what you've done to date, what have been the roles that you've really enjoyed doing? Because the one thing that strikes me, and you've alluded to this earlier on, is that I don't think you've done an out and out evil, sinister character. Like we were saying about 10 Rillington Place, that kind of level of evil.
Well, that's my next thing on the list. But I want to do it in something that, so I'm sort of talking with people at the moment, but I'd want to do it my way. So I'd want to sort of write it and have a friend direct it, and because I don't think it's going to turn up organically. In the way television is at the moment. I don't want it watered down or diluted like some Robertson's orange juice. So hopefully that will come. There's a Spanish film called El Segundo Nombre, and another one called Un Sin Nombre, which I don't know whether you see, which are based on the horror novels of Ramsey McDonald. And there's a character in that. I don't. If you haven't seen it, it won't mean anything to you. But he's a madman, and he's kept in this sort of very white room, and he wears gloves the whole time, and he's got a skin problem up here, and he's an awful pedophile teacher. And if you ever get a chance to see it, he only has about 10 minutes worth of screen time in the whole movie. But one of the most evil people you'll ever see. I mean, you again, forget Lector and everything, and the way this actor does it is, it's so evil, because you don't see anything. It's just the way he plays it. Why is he wearing gloves? Why is he wearing those plastic gloves? And he's got this very subtle, flaky skin, and it's the way he talks. If you can see it, get it. But I'd love to play something like that.
Okay.
But I think you know, there's still time.
Yeah, it's still plenty of time. You're still young.
But yeah, that would be something I would love to do eventually. Yeah,
I mean,
but at the moment, I don't know. I just have to go where I have to go at the moment when the offers come in, and I take them, because they're few and far between for a lot of people at the moment.
yeah. I mean, you've done a lot of work on theatre, and you've won awards for your theatre work. Is that where your heart lies, or is it film?
No, not at the moment. No, not with what's going on in theatre. No, I'm not doing theatre until I find something that interests me, because I'm not interested in doing a gender fluid production where you have to sit around pronouncing pronouns in the pronoun circle. I'm just not interested. I'm just not interested. I wouldn't last very long. I'd be thrown out. So,
but you were great in Cabaret. You won an award for Cabaret.
Yeah, but that was before all this nonsense started. There wasn't non-binary didn't exist when I did Cabaret.
Yeah, true.
Okay, pronouns didn't exist. The preferred pronouns didn't exist when I did. That's how quickly this whole nonsense has taken over, and it was a prime show for people like that. But we were too sensible back then. Everyone just knew it, and I was allowed to play an evil, nasty character in that.
Yeah,
and I loved it. And there are shows around which are fine. And if I get asked and I find the right one, I'd love to go back and do it. But there's a reason why I've stayed away for nine years.
So finally, then, so many actors, and you alluded to this as well about writing your own stuff, but also go behind the camera to direct. Is that where you can see your career going now?
Possibly. It would depend on what it was. It would depend how committed I was, because you're up first, and it's a whole huge thing, and it's raising money, and it's all the I don't know, if something came along which I loved or I wanted to do, maybe, but I just, at the moment, I don't know. In this climate, I don't know. Once this climate has calmed down and we come out to the other side, it all gets down to a bit more normality, where you can say something or show something that wouldn't cause offence to millions. And, I'd like to get back to, horror films, just doing it and letting the film speak for itself.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether that's possible with now social media, because everyone's a critic, everyone's got an opinion, everyone sticks their oar in. So I just don't know how, whether the chances of moving artistic visions forward, whether this is the right space to be able to do it. Hopefully it will be soon. It will happen again. But I just don't think we're there yet.
James, it's been a privilege to speak to you, and thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
I look forward to your evil, psychotic person that you next play. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Simon.